All right, so here we have a customer ask for a product. It's one of the things that we have to deal with in the shoe business system. Okay? So as an analyst, the way I'm going to start this is simply by putting the event on a Klingon sheet or whiteboard or however you're doing it. We're going to come to this table in a little while. Okay? Right now, we're not going to work on it. And I'm going to start by drawing a circle. And the circle represents the process. Okay? I'm not going to label it. The reason I'm not going to label it is because if I give this a name of some kind representing the process, that's where my mind is going to go. I'm going to focus on the power of suggestion is incredible. So I'm going to leave it so as I can have a more or less open mind. So the first question I ask is, you remember we talked about the set of 3 questions before? And the first question is going to be, how do I know that a customer asks for a product? So in other words, how do I know, or how do we know, that we plug in the event statement and the grammar works? It wouldn't if there was a verb in there first. And so how do I know that a customer asks for a product? Well, how do we know? We know because in a brick and mortar store, they show up. So I'm going to put the customer out here. In this box, we typically call that box a terminator. A terminator because that's sort of the extremity of the system. That's the end of the system as far as we're concerned. We don't see beyond that. Nor do we see anything about the decision-making process of the customer. What we're concerned about is what information we get from the customer, what information we have to give to the customer, and so forth. So that first question was, how do I know that a customer asks for a product? I know because they ask. So let's put a data flow here, meaning we get information from the customer, and we get a request for lime green loafers, size 13, from the customer. Okay? So now that we know that the customer has asked for a product, we know what they want even, what do we do next? What do we find out at this point? Well, if we ask the subject matter experts, they're going to say, well, check the inventory to see if the lime green loafers size 13 are available. So what does inventory mean? When we hear the word inventory, well, it means knowing what we've got, where we've got it, the location, how many we've got, the quantity on hand. And accountants might want to throw in the value, right? So we have to find then the product that we got. So I'm going to put an object here called product. And these would be lime green loafers and the other things that we have as well that go with lime green loafers. And I'm going to check the inventory. And I'm going to do that by, I'm going to put a Q here for query, okay? By querying the availability of the lime green loafer size 13 that the customer asked for. And I'm going to label this so as everybody knows what the picture means. I'm going to label it as, is this product available? Well, what are we actually looking for? We're looking for lime green loafer size 13. So what information is contained in lime green loafer size 13? Well, the style is one of the things that we're looking for. So one of the data attributes I have to have in terms of my information about the product is style. Loafers, right? Lime green, which means the color, because I could have different styles and different colors. So I'm looking for a specific style, a loafer. I'm looking for a specific color, lime green. I also need to know the size, because I may have size 9, size 6, and so forth, but not size 13, which is what we're looking for. So I'll look for a size as well. So that's what I heard when the customer said, I'd like to have a pair of lime green loafers size 13. Okay. Now, if they ask for one pair, I also have to know if I have a pair in inventory. Here's my inventory. And that means I have to know about the quantity on hand. I might have 1 pair, I might have 10 pair, I might have 0 pair on hand. So here I'm querying, is it available? Is what available? Loafers, lime green, size 13, 1 pair. So this is called data attribution. We find the data that we need and we attribute that data to the object it best describes. In this case, all of these things describe this thing we call product. Okay? So we've found a home for the data, and we need that data to be able to answer the question, can we deliver this stuff to the customer? So when we do that query about the product, here's the query there, we're going to get a response as well. And I'm going to put the response on the very same data flow. I'm going to put an arrow going back with an answer. And the answer, I'm going to put an R here for response. So do we have this product available? And we get back an answer. We can only have 1 of 2 answers coming back. Yes or no. As an analyst, we always deal with a negative first. So if the answer is, no, we don't have lime green loafers today, then we say, well, what do we want to do about it? Now, just for the sake of simplicity, this is just an example. We're not going to take orders. We're not going to tell them this is a back order. We're not going to get into all that complexity. Our business model is very simple. We're just going to say, we don't have lime green loafers today. Thank you very much. Come back another day. That's as simple as this example is going to be. So we're going to have this data flow going out to the customer that says, not available. Okay. We don't have that today. And we're not going to deal with all the possible options right now. The other possible answer that we can get is, yes, we have lime green loafers today, size 13, just as you asked. Question to the subject matter expert is, well, now that we have what they asked and we know it, does that mean that you honk your horn? Right? So now that we know that, what do you want to do? You want to tell them we've got the product? Sure, we'll tell them we got the product. So we can tell them that we got the product, and we'll put another data flow here. And I'm going to put available, yes. Right? Going out to the client. We'll also want to tell them the price for sure. Does that make sense? It's going to be whatever the price is. Lime green loafers, that's probably about $249.95 for lime green loafers. Okay. But where do I have price information about the product? I don't have that. So since I've now discovered that I need price information, I can attribute that data item to the object called product. So now I can tell the customer it's available and price. So apparently you put the red ones on the red and the blue on the blue, and it works better that way. So price. So we tell them the price. And we ask the customer, so we found them, you want these? There are only 2 possible answers, yes or no. And if the customer says no, that's the end of that. If the customer says yes, what do we want to do? Well, by talking to our subject matter experts, we ask them, so what would you do? They're going to tell us, well, we're going to give them the product, and we're going to get the payment for the product. Okay? So let's get the product from our inventory. And notice here so far, we've not yet talked about how this is done. Only what is done, that it's required. It doesn't matter how we get it from the inventory. We might have somebody run into the back room and pick it off the shelf, or we might have an automated system, whereas we have robots roaming in the back. We push a button, and that robot picks it off the shelf and brings it out. Any number of different ways. But that's not the issue of analysis. The analysis is what, not how it's done. Okay, so we get the product from inventory. I'll just put product in short form there. We'll give that product to the customer. So for the sake of brevity here, I'm just going to put it on the same data flow. And the narrative that we write will explain that we can tell them that it's available, yes, here's the price, and if they decide to buy it, then we'll give them the product. So I'll put that right on the same data flow in this case. All right. And we said that we'll get the payment from the customer. Okay. So we get the payment from the customer. So there's the payment from the customer. Next question is, well, what do we want to do with that? Well, do we want to keep track of that payment? Of course we want to keep track of that payment. So, and our subject matter experts would of course tell us that. So I'm going to put payment right here. Now I know this is an object. How do I know it's an object? I know it's an object because an object, one of these things here, or one of these, always has to have two or more data attributes. If it's only one data attribute, then it's just a data attribute. And a data attribute, by law, has to belong to an object. Now, an object can't be just a data attribute because then we wouldn't know the difference. Because you'll notice that all data attributes are nouns, but all objects are nouns. Well, they're the same thing. What distinguishes an object from a data attribute? The fact that an object is a collection of information about something specific. A collection of information about something specific. And it should only be about that thing. So it should only be about the product, not about the payment. This one over here should only be about the payment, not about the product. Well, if we want to join these two together, we can, as we talked about before, create these foreign keys or these pointers to related objects to join them together. But for now, we're going to take this payment and we're going to record that payment there. What information are we going to record? Well, our subject matter experts will tell us things like, we'll record the amount. We'll record the date of the transaction. We'll record the sales tax, perhaps. And there may be other things, but this is more than two. All we need is two or more. So we'll keep track of that stuff. Now, in this case, you'll notice that I didn't label this data flow. The reason I didn't label the data flow is because it's not important yet to distinguish this data flow from anything else about the payment. That data flow simply says payment information, and that's sufficient to communicate in this case. If I put a verb on here, such as record, then I'm sort of defeating the purpose of the narrative that we're going to write a little bit later on. Because the narrative will say, record the payment. I don't need to put that on the picture. So typically, when we put a label on the data flow, we do that to clarify, not to modify. Can I use that as a verb? Okay, all right. So, talking to the subject matter experts found that we can check the inventory, we eventually give the product to the customer, we get payment from the customer, we keep track of the payment as well. And the customer says, oh, by the way, we better reduce the inventory because otherwise that'll always be out of sync, the quantity on hand. Okay, let's reduce the inventory. And here, I'm going to put a data flow here. And to clarify, even though maybe a little bit redundant, it's not redundant when you have something that sort of hangs there and we don't know what it means. Okay? I'm going to just put reduce inventory. Okay? Now for the camera, that says reduce inventory. Okay? But it's quite small. So we reduce the inventory, which means the quantity on hand is then reduced by the number of products that we've given to the customer. So in talking to the subject matter experts, the clients and subject matter experts, we find out that we want to keep track of the clients that buy stuff from us, that give us payments. So it's okay, fine. Well, what do we have to do then? We have to ask the customer who they are. Okay. So we're going to get some customer information. I'm going to put that up here. We're going to get some customer information from the customer. And we're going to see if they already exist in our database or in our records. So we're going to keep track of the customers. We're going to query to see if they already exist in the records. Red, right? I should be using red there, right? So does the customer already exist in the records? And the answer is going to come back yes or no. Okay, those are the possible answers. So I'm going to have the response coming back here. We always deal with the negative first. The answer is no, they don't exist. In which case, we take the customer information and we record that information or keep track of the customer. And we put customer information here. And now we have information such as, and I won't write it down, such as customer name, customer address, email address, zip code or postal code, name of firstborn, depends how much they owe us, right? Things like that. Right? We'll keep track of the customer. All right. The other possible answer is yes, they do exist. Well, we might get some updated information from the customer and make the adjustments. Okay. Now, somebody mentioned earlier in the statement of work that we got from management that there are 127 stores from coast to coast. And it's going to grow to be over 1,000 in no time at all. And we're going to add an internet store as well. And my question becomes, we want to keep track of which store we sold the product, which store the customer visited, so forth, which store has payments attributed to it. And they said, well, of course we want to keep track of the store. So I'm going to call a store an outlet, okay? Because words create pictures. Let me give you an example. Fax, F-A-X. I want you to picture a fax in your mind. Now, 99% of you will have a picture of an instrument that sits on a desk, eats something, and spews it out the back, which falls behind the desk, which nobody can ever get at. Okay? And 1% of you will think of an electronic fax off a desktop, off a computer system. And the rest of you will say, who uses a fax today, right? Who uses fax today, right? And businesses still use faxes. Yes, 45 years later, we're still using faxes, but they are better. Okay? So words make a difference. So when I say store, most people would say, aha, it's a place you walk into. 1% would think of an internet store, of course, right? So instead of calling it a store, I'm going to call it an outlet. Because an outlet could be anything, whether it be a grade A store or a class D store, depending on different kinds, mix of products, or whether it be an internet store. It doesn't matter what it is. And I'm going to link the information to, well, perhaps the customer, perhaps the payment, or perhaps the product even, in terms of which outlet they bought the product from, made the payment for, or visited, or even went on the internet store as well. I'm going to keep track of who went there, what they wanted, what they paid for, and where it is, or what it is. Now, somebody mentioned to me that we have salespeople. We have hundreds of salespeople across the country. And somebody said, we have to pay these salespeople, and we do measure their productivity in terms of their sales. So the question becomes, do we want to keep track of the salesperson who served the customer, who sold the product, who received the payment? And the answer is yes, we do. I'm going to put the salesperson here. And again, I'm just going to stack these for the sake of saving some space. Use the same data flow so as I can connect that salesperson to the product that was sold. So I can look at who's selling what. Who's good at selling lime green loafers size 13 and who's good at selling orange loafers size 9. You never know if this makes any difference. Keep track of the salesperson who served the customer. Is it possible we want to create a relationship between salesperson and customer? That might be a way of doing it. And keep a relationship between, a connection between salesperson and the payments that are received, if that's important to such things as bonuses or commissions. So I'll just join that information to this diagram. So what do we got here so far? Somebody asks for some shoes, we check inventory. If we find the inventory, we tell them we've got it, otherwise we tell them come back another day. If they like it, they buy it, they give us some money, we keep track of the money, and we keep track of who they are as well. We also keep track of the outlet this happened from and the salesperson who served the customer. So far, so good?